Hello and welcome. I'm Dr. Adam Dorsey, a psychologist in Silicon Valley and the host of Super Psyched, a podcast dedicated to supercharging your life. Each episode contains fun, high-quality interviews with experts looking at psychology from all angles. Super Psyched is your tool to get more of what you want in your life and less of what you don't. A few weeks ago, I was at Stanford Graduate School of Business attending a lecture where one of the speakers was a Silicon Valley legend. At the very end of the lecture, I wanted to say hello and introduce myself, but the line to speak with her was way too long. The person I'm speaking about is none other than Heidi Roizen. For those who are not familiar with her, she has been involved with so many companies, projects, and boards. The list reads like the credits at the end of a movie. But in short, she's a venture capitalist, corporate director, Stanford lecturer, former CEO, and mom. She's also one of the most intelligent, compelling people one could ever want to meet, and I'm not the only person who thinks so. Her case study, known as the Heidi Roizen case study, is part of the curriculum at MBA programs throughout the world. What is the case study? So glad you asked. It's a study that analyzes Heidi's strengths and strategies to effectively leverage her network, her capacity to balance work and personal life, her steps to become a mentor capitalist, and her focus on reciprocity and genuine relationships in professional networking. So listen in as Heidi shares what it takes to have a winning mindset in business. Heidi Roizen, welcome to Super Psyched.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh. I saw you speak at Stanford Graduate School of Business and I was floored. I mean, I had great expectations, but you so ridiculously exceeded them.
Aw.
But let's talk a little bit about, just for those who may not be as familiar with your work, just a brief history of who you are and where you've been.
Sure. It's funny to start with birth for especially a person of my advanced age, but I will just say I was born in Silicon Valley to immigrant parents. And I think that sums up a whole lot about my life. My dad once said to me when I was maybe 10 or 11 years old, he said, "Honey, you don't have to look anywhere else in the world because I've looked all over the world and I decided this is the best place to be." He probably said that to me in the late 60s. I think that was pretty smart of him. So grew up here. Got sucked into technology, as one does, went to Stanford Business School, and then was also very fortunate to have a brilliant programmer brother. And so he and I started a software company together in the early days of the personal computer revolution. And I spent 15 years doing that, had a successful outcome with that. Went to Apple for a year because, I don't know, because everybody has to go to Apple.
That's right.
Or something like that. And then decided that I didn't want to be in the corporate world and became a venture capitalist. And that is now 26 years ago. Been a VC for a very long time.
Amazing. And VC, which is now a household, a couple of letters, is back in, I'm going to guess, 1999, was still kind of on the forefront of unusual. And I'm wondering what it was like. I'm sure in the VC world and in the tech world, you were often one of the only women in the room.
Yes. More so in the tech world than in the VC world. Maybe because at least in part, when you're a VC, you pick who you invest in. So maybe I just was more balanced in my own choices. And I've had the good fortune actually to work with firms that have been very pro women. I mean, I think by the very fact that they hired a woman as a partner, that speaks a lot. So in the early days, I certainly was an anomaly. And I certainly found times where people just didn't give me credibility. I had a couple strikes against me. One was my undergraduate degree was in creative writing.
That's right.
Which gives you no credibility with tech people. Number two, my brother was the programmer, right? So I got hired by your own brother, co-founded a company with your own brother. He couldn't turn you down. And then I was a woman on top of that. So I think that one of the interesting things you learn when you're an entrepreneur, particularly because we bootstrapped the company for the first 6 years before we ever took venture, is the customer doesn't care if you're a man or a woman or a German Shepherd. I mean, they care if your product works and it solves their needs. And so definitely I found that focusing on the product and meeting customers' needs was more important than worrying about being taken seriously as a woman. My brother certainly took me seriously, which was great. And then I got to hire the employees, so they had to take me seriously. For me, I really think what it taught me is when you get a door slammed in your face, you just need to go knock on another door. Sometimes what that also means is not expecting other people to change. It is a message I even give I teach a graduate course at Stanford with a lot of entrepreneurs. And one of the things I tell some of them is, look, if you get into an environment that is hostile to something basic about you, it is easier to go find another environment than it is to try to change the one you're in. And I'm sorry to give you that news, young idealistic people who think you can go in and change the world. I would like you to change the world, but I would just like you to change the world from a place where you're supported. And you should go find those places because you will be more effective in those places. I mean, that was true back then, and it is true now. I was very fortunate that even though, yes, there were people who discriminated against me because I was a woman English major, but there were also some amazing people like the late, great Bill Campbell, who were mentors of mine and who have supported me and worked with me. And I ended up working with a lot of the biggest names in the industry of the day because they didn't care. What they cared about was I competent? Was my company's product of value? Were we doing something interesting? And so it worked out okay.
It seems like one of your great methods of coping was that you were very reality-based. You decided where to focus your attention, and your self-talk was really assistive. Can you describe your self-talk as you see it? Like, how did you decide to speak to yourself? Because we listen to nobody more than we listen to ourselves.
So it's such a great question. And I think it's very important. I once had a t-shirt, I don't know where it went, but it said, "Don't believe everything you think."
I love that.
Which I really love because it is so true that we can really hurt ourselves with self-talk. My belief is we can also kid ourselves with self-talk. So I am not necessarily a believer with this idea of get up every morning and say what you want and it'll just happen.
Right.
I'm a big believer of the neurons that fire together, wire together. And I'm a big believer that when you find yourself, I call it circling the drain, or I call it the spin cycle in the dryer, right? It's just I'm going around and around and around, and I'm rethinking some dumb thing I said or did, that you need to stop, that you need to actually put the brakes on that because it's not helpful. And so over time, one of the things I've learned is just to be able to say, there are a few things I say to myself that remind me to keep moving forward, right? One of them is, if I'm rethinking something, unless there is value in the thought process, unless I am going to derive some knowledge from rethinking things, if I'm not, and I'm just beating up myself, then I should stop. So that's one of them. Another thing I tell myself is, I've had the good fortune of working with a whole lot of people, and some of them are brilliantly smart. They've been the smartest people on the planet. I mean, I've worked with Bill Gates. I've worked with Steve Jobs. These people are generational legends for a reason. Still able to work with them. I still managed to contribute some value to the work that we did together. And on the most part, I'd say we all have something to offer, and we're all generally not that much smarter or dumber than the next guy. Yep. And so when I find myself struggling with something, I try to break that down and say, hey, look, I'm here. I'm trying to do my best. I'm trying to learn. And I can unpack this, and I shouldn't be intimidated. And again, that's another thing that age benefits one. The older you get, the less intimidated you are by other people. I think by the mere fact that you've existed this far and accomplished whatever you've accomplished. And so I think that gives me a great license to be authentic. And that's not quite the question you asked about self-talk, but I think it is another element of how I even think about myself is I'm not sitting there constantly thinking, what kind of impression am I making on other people? And what kind of words should I say right now or do, or that sort of thing? What I'm thinking about is, how can I move the ball forward for this team on the project that they're working on? And that's important. And if people walk away saying, wow, she was collaborative and helpful and she had a good idea, that's awesome. But I'm not trying to manage or manipulate what people are taking away from that. And then the final thing I say, and I think this is another thing, is age is a great benefit, is you will get through this. Tomorrow's another day. It'll be okay. get up and move forward. Because again, you sometimes face situations where you really feel like it is the end. And then you determine that actually you get up the next day and maybe sometimes it is, maybe it's the end. It could be the end of your company. But one of the things I have to tell entrepreneurs is the end of your company is not the end of you. And as much as you might identify with your startup, at the end of the day, startups can die without the people who started them dying. They're circling around in my head. Those are some of my own top hits that I remind myself and other people of to keep me in my lane.
So in addition to don't believe everything you think, you have just thrown down so many t-shirts that would be really excellent, including how can I move the ball forward? The end of your company does not mean the end of you. There are just so many that are brilliant.
It's so funny you say t-shirt because I will say my kids got me a sweatshirt for Christmas and it says my name, which is Roizen, but it says Roizen. And the top says deliver value and the bottom says remain calm, which I think it is so funny that my name really ends up being like a really good brand identity for me because I like to deliver value and I like to remain calm.
I cannot believe it. ROI, return on investment, Zen. It's fantastic. That
t-shirt wouldn't sell well, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a pretty funny one.
It's an accurate pun and it works perfectly for who you are. And a neurological fact is neurons that fire together wire together. It's known as Hebb's law. Very true, irrefutable. And the other one that's a nice corollary to don't believe everything you think is that feelings are not facts. But you're describing that idea of that one-wing death spiral and how you're able to arrest it and say, am I just ruminating or am I delivering some value? Because if I'm not, I'm going to arrest this. And I think that is a really easy thing to say and a really hard thing to do. And I think that's probably one of the most important aspects to your smashing success. I like coming into a meeting primed. And it seems like you prime yourself at the very least with this great question of how can I move the ball forward? And that's where you keep your eyes on the prize.
Well, and it is one of the things, because again, as a VC, if you look at what I do on a day-to-day basis, right? I'm on the board of a satellite company. I'm on the board of a cell-based meat company. I'm on the board of a women's health company. I've been on the boards of all sorts of different businesses. You're not there to be the subject matter expert on the thing they do. You're there to try to help them synthesize what's going on in their business and what steps they might take. And so the only way you're going to be able to do that is by listening and participating, because you're not walking in with the secret formula for whatever they're doing. So you have to be good at that. And you have to be good at sort of leaving something at the door and coming in with that attitude, because on any given day, you walk out of a comp committee meeting for one company and you have to go to an audit committee meeting for a company, a completely different business. You do have to kind of be good at wiping down the whiteboard and walking in clean, saying, okay, what do we have to do here? And the other thing is be prepared, which is a bone I have to pick with not a lot, but a certain number of VCs who don't read the documents and just come in and pontificate. And that drives me crazy because you need to be prepared. You need to know what's going to be talked about. You need to have read the material and take in the data, because if you don't, you're just wasting other people's time.
And you even read up on me in LinkedIn, which is not common for a guest. And so let's hear a little bit about what constitutes preparation as you see it.
We have so much available to us. The digital world provides us so much. Like, we went to high school in the same town, a rather big town, but the town of San Jose. I don't think it's really called a town, but that's okay.
It's a town from our perspective.
It was a town, at least when I'm
for sure.
I am older than you, so it was more of a town when I was there, but it was still a pretty big place. I have to roll this back a little bit to say one of my most important tenets of my life and how I live my life is the idea that life is relationship driven and not transaction driven. If there's a mantra that'll be associated with me, it is going to be that. Life is about relationships. And not only is that good for your business, it is even the secret to happiness, right? If you read all the happiness books, they say the key to happiness is work and relationships. So we can do that, especially in the tech world. When you're working with entrepreneurs, you build relationships and you build meaningful work. So meaningful work, meaningful relationships. For me, it's always relationship ahead of transaction. Why is that? Like I just said, I'll be happier. And also because I'm a fundamental believer in the idea that the relationships you build through your work life will actually lead you to be a more accomplished person, because none of us lives alone in a vacuum, right? We all need the other people in our ecosystems. And if there's any one thing I can tell other people, having lived in Silicon Valley now for my entire life, is the same people come back over and over.
Oh my God. You think you'll never see them again? You're wrong.
Yeah. So how you treated them, what did you do with them? Were you helpful or not? That reputation lives, and it precedes you even, because again, people ask each other, oh, is she good to deal with? And so that to me is kind of my number one thing. And it directs a lot of what I do and how I operate. And not all things can be done that way. Sometimes you find that the other person on the other side of a negotiating table doesn't give a crap and they're just going to treat you bad or something. But I do believe if you go in with that idea and you remember we're all humans first and we're our jobs second, and come in with that humanity, come in with that empathy. If somebody snaps at you, 95% of the time, it's not about you.
That's right.
It's because they had a crappy day. Reframing things to, hey, that person just broke up with their spouse this morning, and that's why they're snapping at me. Again, another one of those pieces that fits to this is, I assume good intent. I assume everyone has good intent, because largely people do. And then if I'm proven wrong, then I put my guards up. Then I know. But for the most part, if you assume good intent and you assume that there's always a win-win to try to create a collaborative relationship and make the pie bigger for both sides, you will just get more done and you will be happier.
The nuggets that you just take for granted that you're just dropping over here, just phenomenal. These are words to live by.
I've had a long time to think about it.
Well, at least you have, because not everybody does.
Yeah.
And age does not necessarily mean wisdom. I think that you've actually done that thing called thinking, which is not common, I'm sad to say. And it's part of the reason that this podcast even exists, is to inspire more of what you're describing. I feel a real kinship with you for a host of reasons, but one of which is I just recently wrote a book about the 4 ways we humans connect. And you are known as the ultimate connector. You are, I think of you in some ways, as I was doing my research, I thought of you as kind of a modern day female version of Benjamin Franklin. Like, you have this ability to...
I do think he was a little smarter than I am.
Well, regardless of that, one of the things that you seem to be able to do is really find bridges. And I was wondering if you could share some great tips as you see it on connecting with people.
Well, as we say, I kind of touched on it very briefly, but when you asked what should you do ahead of time, I said, do your homework. The digital world provides so much information. You can look for connective tissue. You can look for things that are important to the other person. You can just understand. And I think that is the key to unlocking a relationship, is that humans are social animals and we survive by being social animals. In order to do that, we form tribes, right?
Absolutely.
Sometimes not so good that we do, but for the most part, it's a good thing. And looking for that connective tissue with someone else to give you a kernel around which you can form that relationship, I think is why you do that homework. I mean, that is the start of it. I'm struggling because I'm tying this back to thinking about this whole, how do you actually do relationships? The thing people say to me all the time, well, you're an extrovert. I'm like, actually, no, I am not. If you gave me a choice, especially at this age, do you want to go to a cocktail party and meet 25 people, or do you want to sit at home and read a book and pat your dog? I will pick sit at home, read a book, and pat my dog. So I do think that having a strategy for, I'm going to go there. I don't need to meet everyone in the room. I just want to come away with 1 or 2 people. I ask for attendee lists all the time of things I'm going to, because I like to look up people and I like to say, well, I want to meet these 2 people. And I don't pick the most important person in the room, right? Because everybody's going to aim for that person. And believe me, if you walk up to someone and say, I got the attendee list ahead of time, and you are one of the 2 people in the whole room I really wanted to meet, and you have a good reason why, because you have the job I want to have in 5 years or whatever it is, they're going to talk to you. They're going to be flattered. It's a great way to open doors. So I just think people are intimidated a lot more than they need to be. I guess it goes back to that thing of, we're all people. We all have something to give. We all have our bad days. Just remember that when you walk in a room, we're all just messy people trying to survive, and be comfortable with that.
Such a great point. There is some evidence. Susan Cain talks about this notion that many people appear to be extroverted and they're not. And she said, an introvert with conviction appears to be extroverted. She cites Craig of Craigslist. She cites Mother Teresa, Bill Gates as being people who are able to appear on the outside as extroverted, but they would much rather sit at home in their fuzzy bunny slippers with their dog in a book any day of the week rather than.
It's interesting because to me, the problem with saying that is it makes it sound like they're faking it. So they appear to be something they're not. Knowing one of those people quite well, it's just that he's really passionate about what he does.
100%.
And so he gets in a room and he gets going and he's not worried about, I don't know, what impression he's making or whatever. He's trying to get something done. And so I think that we look at other people and we tend to have our Facebook filter on and we always assume everybody else has it more going. That's why I think it's comforting to think most people don't. Most people aren't extroverts in the way people think of that. You know, you walk in and you own the room, right? Most people are not that guy or that girl or that person. I would argue this is along the lines of like the Silicon Valley thing, fake it till you make it. I do not like that expression. I do not like faking things. What I like is moving forward with the confidence that you are going to be successful. So like in this, I don't think it's faking extrovertism. Is that a word? Extroversion. I guess it's extroversion. I don't know.
Sure.
It's going in and recognizing, hey, I'm not going to own this room. I'm not going to be the center of attention. I don't want to be. I just want to meet two people and just go meet those two people. I think people wish they were something that they're not. And the truth is, if they were that, it doesn't mean that it's beneficial, right? I do think that being a connector, I kind of hate the expression, oh, you're really good at networking. No, but I'm really good at building connections with people and connecting them to other people when I think there will be a win-win in it for them without there needing to be a win-win in it for me other than just cosmic points or something like that. I like making people happy and I like seeing things work out for people. And so I think that for everyone, you don't want to come up with a whole list of artificial things that you have to do. What you want to come up with is a list of things you're going to grow about yourself. And growing is painful. Part of the reason we don't like doing this stuff is it's hard. It's easier to stick with what we know. But I think sometimes you have to grow. Like, for example, when I first started my company and I was the CEO and I got asked to sit on a panel, in 1984 or whenever, I'm 25 years old or 26 years old. I'd never been on a panel before. And I was so scared. I was shaking so hard that the panelist next to me asked me if I was ill. No lie. And I remember thinking to myself, this is really hard and I really hate it. And if I want to be a CEO, I have to get really good at this. And so I threw myself at every speaking opportunity and I volunteered to go speak at classrooms and I just threw myself at it until it was no longer scary for me. That's not faking it. That's growing, right? That is genuinely saying, this is a skill set I need to learn. Now, the flip side of that is you can't be good at everything. Part of it is knowing when you're not going to be good at something and being able to say, that is not going to be my field of expertise. My funny example about this, given I was the CEO of an early spreadsheet company, is I actually trained on the wrong spreadsheet, right? Our spreadsheet is different format. Imagine like the other spreadsheets speak English and we spoke French. It was a different way of doing things and our way didn't win, which is fine. But I never really got to be a spreadsheet whiz. And then I became a VC and you have to do a lot of analysis. I was like, oh my God, I really suck at building spreadsheets. But guess what? I was a partner and I had a principal and an associate working for me and they were whiz kids at spreadsheets. And so I decided in my grand scheme of life, mastering Excel was not something I needed to do. I need to know how to read financial documents. I do not need to know how to create complicated spreadsheets. And so I just decided that was not an area of expertise for me because it wasn't going to be tremendously relevant to my job because my job is at the end of the day still a team sport. And there were other people on my team who could do what I was not going to be able to do.
That level of discernment of recognizing what do I need to be good at versus what do I not need to be good at. And how can I grow this thing? How can I grow it till I become it? Very important. I mean, imagining
Absolutely.
you shaking like a leaf and exposing yourself to as many opportunities as possible to grow it till you became it. And what we call that in psych is exposure and response prevention. And that's a really important technique of reducing our anxiety. One of the things we know for sure is the more we avoid the thing that makes us anxious, the more anxious we become. And you threw yourself right into the middle of the fray and said, I'm doing this because I need it, but I don't need to know spreadsheets. And that level of discernment causes me to ask this question. What's the best piece of advice you've ever received? And what's the worst?
Well, I'm laughing because just this morning I was meeting with an entrepreneur and I gave him some advice and I said, I'm going to give you some advice. And I bet when I finish, you're going to tell me you've had the exact opposite advice. So here's my advice. I gave him my really great advice. And he said, you are right. I had exactly that opposite advice an hour ago from somebody else. It's funny because when I think about it, it's not like somebody sits you down and gives you advice. I think this is a misnomer or mischaracterization of the mentor-mentee relationship. It is not like you go to the foot of the mountain and you sit there and the person espouses wisdom. I generally find that you learn something from someone when you are working together on a work product and they know something that you don't. And so it isn't somebody saying, hey, it's all going to be okay, or hey, whatever. I mean, the best advice I've gotten comes in more of a class of comments where somebody else saw something I didn't see and said, hey, if you keep on this path, this product you're really trying hard to ship is dead in the water anyway. You just need to realize that, right? That was a very real thing that I remember many years ago. And so to me, the best pieces of advice come in those sorts of packages. They don't come in sort of the wisdom from the mountaintop sort of thing. I'm laughing because my own best piece of advice, I had an epiphany about a year and a half ago. And I joke because it was a piece of advice that came from the inside of my brain as I was waking up in the middle of the night. And it was about taking care of my health. And I woke up with the following words in my mind. You know what to do. Now just fucking do it. And so I literally woke up with that in my mind because I had been dealing with some health issues. And it was an epiphany of, yeah, that is true. I know what causes the things that I am struggling with, and I know what to do about them. I just have to do it. If I told everyone, here's your homework assignment from me today, say that to yourself and then decide, what am I telling myself? And for me, it was very much around good health practices. It was about, I know everything about nutrition that at least you can know given the current literature. And I know everything about diet and exercise, and you're supposed to meditate and you're supposed to get enough sleep and all that stuff. Well, it turns out you can actually improve on every one of those things, but you have to actually do it. And so I did. And it has had this dramatically positive change on my health. Sometimes if you would only listen to yourself, you will give yourself the best advice.
I love that so much. The JFDI, the just fucking do it, is such an important tenet because there's a chasm between what we know and what we do. Common sense and common practice, not the same.
No.
We know this. I mean, if you were to talk to senior executives and say, prepare for the meeting, they'd say, of course I know about that. And yet they still do things extemporaneously and from the hip, and they know better.
It's hard sometimes. It's hard to break pattern. Like one of the things I did is I have pretty much stopped eating sugar and processed foods.
And what?
And processed foods.
Wow.
I make all my own food. I don't eat things that have sugar in them. Yes, I had a piece of birthday cake on my birthday. Okay. But for the most part, I don't anymore. It has had a dramatic effect on my health. When people say to me, they're like, oh my God, you look great. Your skin looks great. You look really rested and you lost some weight. What's your secret? And they're all hoping I'm going to say Ozempic because that would be easy.
Exactly.
But instead I say, oh, I'll tell you, but you're not going to like the answer. And they say, oh, really? I'm like, yeah, I stopped eating sugar. I pretty much stopped drinking alcohol. I make all my own food. I stop eating around 4 or 5 o'clock, which makes me really unsocial because it's hard to go to a dinner party that starts after 5 o'clock and sit there not eating and drinking. And I go to bed by 9 o'clock. And they're like, oh my God, like I'm not going to do that. And hey, I break my own rules every once in a while on all this stuff too, because it is hard. And it is also not socially acceptable to do some of the things that I now do. But I think the point is, I think so many of us, we know what to do. It's not that we don't know what to do. It's just that we don't want to do it.
Last night I ate at around 8:30 p.m., which is so bad for my sleep. And this morning, you and I are both wearing Oura rings, and my Oura ring told me my REM sleep sucked. And it's just like, it will tell you. And I'm so glad that I have this to keep me
honest. The Oura ring don't lie.
It don't lie.
I'm like, oh my God. And I show that to people sometimes. I show them my own data to say, look, this is why, like, here is what my heart rate looks like after one glass of wine. One glass. And I think also the more I age, the more sensitive I am to all this sort of stuff too, right? Caffeine, alcohol, sugar. Your body just becomes, I think, less able to process things. And so you become more sensitive. But yeah, I think somebody said to me, oh my God, I would never wear an Oura ring because I don't want to know. Right. So, I mean,
right. It's like putting black tape over your car's dashboard. We all do this to some extent. And yet, you're right. The answer that you render is not the answer anybody wants to hear. They want to hear a silver bullet. They want to hear Ozempic. They want to hear it's something super simple and whatever. The paradox is that in youth, we'll sacrifice our health to acquire wealth. And as we get older, we'll happily sacrifice our wealth to keep our health. So
100%.
Yeah. So it's just doing the inconvenient things. One of the things that I've adopted, and it's been one of the most important of my daily routines, is exposing myself to the sunlight first thing in the morning, letting my suprachiasmatic nucleus, that part of the brain that sets our biological rhythms, it's so crucial. What's another one of your favorite little tips that kind of keeps you on top? You've mentioned no sugar.
Now I'm turning into one of those old people pontificating about stuff because all the things I already said, nobody's going to want to do that. And they're going to be like, that woman is crazy because she didn't do that stuff. But I do also meditate. And I learned how to meditate a number of years ago. I took the TM courses.
Me too.
It really helps.
Yep.
Like, it really helps. But again, you got to do it. And I fall in and out of practice. But I find that meditation, the way I describe it to people is, it used to be you'd go out in the world and the world's just slapping you and hitting you and you're reacting. And then after you consistently meditate for a while, what you realize is, like, I describe it as like, if I could go sit at the bottom of my swimming pool and then the world is going on up here and it's still going on. I can still see it. I could probably hear it a little bit, but it's just not hitting me anymore. It's just the difference between being in a boat on the surface of a rough sea and scuba diving and being 20 feet below all that stuff. And I just find that's how my nervous system feels on a daily basis when I consistently meditate. I'll give you an easier one because everybody's like, oh my God, this Roizen woman's crazy. Like you, I like to get outside a lot. So one of the things I really try to do is I schedule as many meetings as I can as walks instead of sitting in an office. Obviously, I'm not very good at going to lunch or dinner or having a drink with someone anymore. And so I schedule walks and I try to make sure I have at least one of those scheduled every day because it forces you to go and have a walk. Today I don't because it's pouring rain here. But most days I do. And I think that's a nice way to force yourself to do something, right? If you schedule a walk meeting every day, well, then you've got to go walk.
Absolutely. Another guest, Shelly Archambault, who you may know.
Oh, yeah. I know Shelly very well.
She's pretty outstanding. That's one of her things too, is the walk and talk and integrating that work-life balance, so to speak, of just saying, hey, listen, I'm going to live and work, which I think is really great.
And the added benefit of walking is you're not looking at your device and they're not looking at their device. And so you actually have a better meeting when you're walking, unless PowerPoints are involved, in which case it's not a good idea.
And psychologically, if you think about it, the two of you are exploring new frontiers together. It's almost like our ancient brains are oriented for that. That's the way we used to do things. We used to hunt, we used to forage together, and we're kind of leveraging that part.
And even if it's a crappy meeting, you get to the end, you're like, well, at least I had a good walk.
At least I got some steps in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love that. Is there anything I should have asked but haven't yet asked?
I'm probably the living testament. I believe that it is very hard to separate your work life from your personal life, and especially the kind of work that I do. And I've been lucky enough to do my whole life. And so I think just like that, I mean, you can't think of yourself as the work person versus the not work person. I mean, to me, all this like health stuff, it's 24/7. You don't get to say, well, I'm working today, so I'm not going to pay attention, because believe me, the warranty has run out at my age. And so I just think that accepting our humanness, and not only accepting it, but seeing it for the wonderful thing it is and accepting that in other people and taking care of that for yourself is really important.
Well, I couldn't agree more. And we're talking about aging, and I'm going to bring it to the other side before I ask my final question. That is, what is your advice for high schoolers and college students in a world that is changing so rapidly, where so many youngsters are concerned about AI taking over?
Well, I'm concerned too. So, I mean, the best thing you can do when you're worried about something is learn all you can about it. I would encourage people to do that. I don't have a crystal ball. I cannot predict the future and what the jobs will be and where that will be. But I can tell you that the best inoculation you can have for your future, if that's the right word, or the most fertile soil, is continuing to have a learning mentality, continue to go into every day saying, I'm going to learn something new. I'm going to do something new. I'm going to keep educating myself. I think it is such a tragedy how much other people care about social media. And I just think it would be really hard to be a teenager today with social media and worrying so much about what other people think of you. I'll close with one of my favorite expressions, and it's not mine. It's actually Shirley MacLaine said this. It's called the 20-40-60 rule. At 20, you're constantly worried about what other people think of you. At 40, you decide, I'm not going to give a damn what other people think of me. And at 60, you come to realize that no one was actually thinking of you. I love that so much, because what I try to tell young people who are so focused on this, and I think that the problem is, we don't need to go into all the ills of social media except to say, what is their business model? It is to get you to keep reading stuff about other people. And what do other people put out there? Not their true selves, their Facebook selves, right? And so measuring yourself against that is just really unhealthy. And so I'd like to chalk this up to being a great mom, but I'm not sure. I think my kids they're just great kids, but neither one of them is particularly big on social media because I just don't think they care. And I just wish I could tell the current generation of teenagers, like, oh, just don't care about that stuff so much. It's just not that important.
There's a concept in psychology called the spotlight effect. People are not paying attention to us as nearly as much as we think. And Teddy Roosevelt once said something so good. People would stop caring about what others thought about them if they knew how seldom they do.
Yeah, so exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's a really important thing for us to really take in. And the fact is, what we see on social media are false selves. It's the NutraSuite, as Laurie Santos out of Yale says, it's the NutraSuite of connection. My final question for you, Heidi, is if you had the power, the magical power to confer upon all humanity one insight or skill that would dramatically improve the lives of the individual, and since we're all connected, society at large, what would that skill or insight be? And how do you imagine it would impact the individual as well as perhaps society?
I just want to turn up one dial on everybody. And I don't know whether I want to call the dial empathy or kindness, because I think they are related. If you have more empathy, you end up being more kind. But right now, given the world situation, I wish we would just have a little more empathy and be a little kinder to each other.
If my podcast were Family Feud, that would be the number one answer. And hearing it from you and hearing it from each individual has a different flavor. And I love that you said that. As this person who is so well connected in Silicon Valley, has her finger on the pulse of so much of what's going on. It's carries so much gravitas. It's been such a pleasure.
Well, if it makes anybody be more kind and more empathetic, then I am glad to wield my weight in that direction.
You did. And it's so meaningful coming from you, is what I'm saying.
Well, thank you.
Heidi, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. And even
thank you. Thank you for sharing your audience with me and all your great questions. This has been a lot of fun.
Thanks so much. This is Dr. Adam Dorsey thanking you for listening to Super Psyched. If you know anyone who might like it or who might benefit from listening, share it. And if you like the episode, please hit subscribe.